Kuki village volunteer groups warn Meiteis against entering Kuki areas, renewed threat to Manipur's fragile peace. By TMB News Network, Woipers, Imphal, May 14. As Manipur prepares for the annual Shirui Lily Festival in Tangkhul Naga, Majority Ukhrul District, a grave warning issued by the Kuki-zo Village Volunteer Eastern Zone has sparked fresh anxieties over ethnic polarization in the state. The group has explicitly warned Meitei community members against entering or traversing Kuki-inhabited villages, particularly those along the Imphal-Ukhrul Highway, such as Lytton. This strongly worded advisory comes as the Manipur government announced that Manipur State Transport (MST) buses will operate from Imphal to Ukhrul during the festival, scheduled from May 20th to May 24th. The annual event, which celebrates the blooming of the rare Shirui lily, now risks becoming a flashpoint in Manipur's ongoing ethnic crisis. The warning from Kuki Village volunteers. In an official statement, the Kuki-zo Village Volunteer Eastern Zone declared, "We strongly advise all members of the Meitei community to refrain from entering or crossing our areas at any time. Any violation of this direction will be considered intentional, and individuals shall bear full responsibility for any consequences that may follow." The group's warning carries serious implications, particularly because the Litan Road, a key segment between Imphal and Ukhrul, passes through Kuki-dominated regions. Their stance is uncompromising, signaling that no Meitei presence will be tolerated in Kuki territory under current conditions. Lingering trauma from unresolved ethnic violence. The stark warning cannot be viewed in isolation. It is a direct response to the 2023 ethnic violence, the scars of which remain unhealed and unaddressed. Over a year since the conflict erupted between Meitei and Kuki-zo communities, there has been no lasting resolution, no justice process, and no meaningful dialogue initiated by state or central authorities. The Kuki community, still reeling from the violence, alleges that more than 200 Kuki civilians were killed, and over 200 villages were razed and looted by armed mobs, many of whom, they claim, operated with the backing or indifference of the state administration. Churches, homes, and schools were burned down, and thousands were displaced. These events, widely reported in print and online media and shared through community networks and gatherings, have deepened an already widening rift. According to many Kuki leaders, such brutality was not an accident but a campaign, justifying their current position. Will Kukis allow Meiteis to freely travel through our lands after they burned 200 villages and butchered our people? A local youth leader asked during a recent village meeting. They expect us to act like nothing happened while we're still burying our dead. Demands for separation and the question of sovereignty. In response to these events, the Kuki-zo community has grown increasingly vocal in its call for a separate administration. The collective sentiment, echoed across banners, protests, and memorial services, is that coexistence is no longer viable under the current administrative setup. The popular slogan, "No Meitei should trespass Kuki territory until a separate administration is achieved," has been repeatedly voiced in public and private gatherings in Kuki areas. It is a hard line, but one that, in their view, responds to historical and recent oppression. Kuki intellectuals and elders argue that this is not an act of hostility, but one of self-defense and preservation. Decades of economic deprivation, unequal representation, and institutional neglect, compounded by the violence of 2023, have left them with no option but to demand separation. Ashang Kashar's controversial remarks spark outrage. Against this backdrop, Asang Kashar, a Tangkhul social worker, issued a public condemnation of the Kuki statement, calling it a direct challenge to every citizen of Manipur. This shows they are against peace. Festivals like Shirui Lily are opportunities for healing and celebrating our diversity. Issuing such threats only deepens our divides, he stated initially. However, the situation escalated when Kashar's speech was amplified through social media, particularly across Valley-based media platforms, where his remarks took on a sharper, accusatory tone, including allegations that the Kuki community was obstructing peace and progress. These comments triggered a furious response from Kuki communities, who view Kashar's rhetoric not as a plea for unity, but as a veiled threat and misinformation campaign aimed at isolating and demonizing Kukis. Critics allege that Ashang Kashar has exploited the Kuki-Meitei conflict for personal gain, positioning himself as a leading figure while consistently presenting a one-sided narrative. His actions and speeches, recorded by Kuki communities, are seen as working against their interests. Ashang Kashar is spreading hatred toward the Kuki people through media and social platforms. A Kuki Youth Federation wrote in a public release, "Instead of calling for peace, he's trying to rally opinion against us and justify more violence. Let it be clear, Kukis are not bound to back down by any threats. Forcing us will only bring more resistance and more bloodshed." The Kuki-zo community, already on edge, views such narratives as deliberate provocations that could incite further violence. Community leaders have called on media outlets to act responsibly and refrain from publishing ethnically charged statements that could escalate tensions, security, governance, and the rule of law. The warning from the Kuki armed group and the surrounding tensions raise serious questions about governance, law enforcement, and constitutional rights in Manipur. Article 19 of the Indian Constitution guarantees freedom of movement, and barring citizens based on ethnic identity is a clear violation of fundamental rights. Yet, with armed volunteer groups controlling key areas and issuing advisories, the authority of the state appears either compromised or selectively enforced. The Manipur police, despite DGP Rajiv Singh's visit to Ukhrul to oversee festival security, must now contend with the possibility of violent roadblocks and local resistance. There is also growing fear that civilian confrontations or ambushes could occur if these warnings are ignored, making the situation highly volatile. The need for leadership and mediation. At a time when Manipur stands on the brink of ethno-political fragmentation, it is imperative for state and central governments to intervene, not just as security enforcers, but as mediators and peace builders. The current standoff is not merely about road access or festival attendance. It concerns whether Manipur can continue to exist as a single political entity. Civil society organizations, religious groups, and peace commissions must be urgently mobilized. The ongoing atmosphere of fear, suspicion, and propaganda must be replaced with honest dialogue, truth-telling, and restorative justice. Conclusion. Manipur at a critical crossroads. The ethnic strife between Meiteis and Kukis remains far from resolved. Both communities, shaped by a year of violence and loss, now view each other as adversaries. With no reconciliation in sight and demands for separation growing louder, the concept of shared citizenship is increasingly fragile. The warning from the Kuki-zo village volunteer group may be viewed by some as extreme, but it is also symptomatic of a deeply fractured society. Until there is an honest reckoning with the events of 2023, until justice, healing, and autonomy are addressed, true peace will remain elusive. The Shirui lily, meant to symbolize beauty and resilience, now blooms under the shadow of political and social disintegration. Disclaimer from Zalengam Media. This article is based on news reports, publicly available statements, community releases, and media coverage gathered from multiple sources by the editorial team at Zalengam Media. The purpose of this article is to present a consolidated account of current developments in Manipur. Zalengam Media is not responsible for the amplification or interpretation of statements by third parties and is not liable for the consequences of actions or reactions in either Kuki-majority or Meitei-majority areas arising from this publication.